Friday night, and here we are, folks. We are going to have a great weekend. We're going to kick it off with tonight's show, which is going to be good. We got Katie already here. Give everybody some time to slide in, and tonight's going to be interesting. We've been hitting the Dogman and Bigfoot pretty hard lately, even some hippie trees, but we're going to give that a rest with tonight's topic, and we have a incredible guest who's going to uh, definitely give us some new information on things that I have always been interested in, but we're going to put a little science with it too as well. So hopefully everybody's having a good weekend. Up here in Michigan, we finally are getting some spring-like weather. I think we hit a high 60 today. Sunny, rainy, almost like Florida weather. But it's all good. And it's going to be a great weekend. And with the weather getting improved, I should be getting back out in the woods here pretty soon. The the health reasons are starting to clear up, so hopefully next weekend we'll be out in the forest and seeing what the local hairy people have been up to. Hopefully they've left us something to find, but we'll find out. And just to announce also, next week's show is going to be a Q&A, and you guys get to pick the questions. So what I would like you to do, if you could, is hit me up on my Facebook page or Bigfoot's Barbershop, YouTube or Facebook. Leave your questions and also hit likes on the one you like, and we'll do the most popular ones and go from there, depending on how much time we have for everything. But in the meantime, we have Mr. Keith Evans, author, quite a bit to his name, and so we're going to bring him out and get this show started. Mr. Evans, how are we doing tonight?
Doing good. How about you?
We're doing good. Honored to have you. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
How are things you said you were in Florida?
Well, it's a cooler than normal spring. Daytime highs probably in the mid 70s and nighttime lows in between 55 to 65 degrees.
That's perfect for people in Michigan. We'd be in tank tops and shorts already. So why don't you give us a little background? Let everybody know all the good things that you're into, what we got going on.
Well, I've written two books since I retired. The first book was published in 2018, and it's called The Hayes House Ghoster People 2. It's out of print now, but it's still available ebook on Kindle, and that's The Hayes House Ghoster People 2. My second book that I published October of 2018 is called Vampires Dead or Alive. And that book is available on Amazon paperback and also on Kindle ebook. Now, I've been told that Amazon can um, negotiate with other book vendors to allow them to sell my book. So if you have a favorite book vendor and it's not Amazon, shop around. It might be available on your favorite book vendor. But so far, I've only received royalties from Amazon and Kindle. And this past month, the highest grossing book sales were actually in the UK and Japan. So I'm very happy to have book sales overseas in the United Kingdom and Japan. So thank you to my fans out there, and thank you to my fans every place in the world that has purchased my book, whether it be the paperback or the ebook or the Hayes House Ghoster People 2 or Vampires Dead or Alive. I've been a paranormal researcher since I was about 4 years old. I kind of discovered the paranormal by being a empath. Uh, Different things that other people had owned and liked and loved, I could feel the happiness that that object brought them. And my parents weren't too happy about it. But other than that, I pretty much kept the paranormal to myself because my parents were pretty conservative and they liked to label people that didn't fit in with what their constraints for society were. So I didn't like having all these negative labels that they wanted to throw at me. So I pretty much went underground with the paranormal, and I knew that there was something more out there than what they were able to comprehend. And I just wanted to learn more. And that got me interested in ghosts and spirits and vampires. And I used to do Bigfoot hunting when I lived in Maryland. Never found one. Found some twisted vines that were unnatural. The vines or the limbs on long, skinny limb type bushes, I knew they didn't grow that way. So that's about it. I never even found any Bigfoot tracks in Maryland. So I've been doing paranormal research with equipment like the Melmeter and the Obelisk 5-4 as early as maybe 2011, 2012. Prior to that, all my paranormal research is just pretty much primitive. And I don't really rely on my empathic abilities because they are rather weak. And I need to either be in a house for a prolonged period of time for my empathic abilities to really kick in and be of any good, or I need to, just have excess and do prolonged periods of paranormal research in one location. And if I pick up on anyone, I pick up on someone who's been there, who lived in that house for a long time. For instance, at the Hayes house, I picked up on Kathleen Hayes with my empathic abilities. And it was mainly because she had lived at the Hayes house from 1942 when her and her husband, Pat Hayes, purchased a house up until right before she went into a assistant care living facility, and she sold the Hayes house in 1996. So she had been there for 54 years, and I can pick up on her very easily. Other members of her family, not so much. So that's what helps me in my empathic abilities, being able to stay in a spot for a long period of time and also picking up on someone who actually lived at that location for a long period of time. That helps me to have a stronger, and I mainly pick up emotions. Like with Kathleen Hayes, the emotions I picked up with her is she wanted the Hayes house to be saved in its original condition, and she wanted a family to buy the house and use it the way her family and she had used it for almost 54 years. And from what her family members who were living told me, that they constantly throughout from 1942 until 1996, they had every Thanksgiving and Christmas dinner there at the Hayes house. It was like a family tradition. And that's what Kathleen wanted. She wanted the family to live there and enjoy the house the way she enjoyed the house. So anyway, I'll tell you about my book, Vampires Dead or Alive. It's not about a vampire. It's about all vampires. It just talks about, I start out using 11 chapters. Each chapter is based on the traditional ability of a vampire, like, say, the ability to shapeshift. And I start out and I look at it. Is the vampire who shapeshifts more like a dead or a living person? And in this case, dead and living people cannot shapeshift. So it's none of the above. And then from there, I go to my theories to explain why and how a vampire may shapeshift. And I go into a lot of detail about the fact that you would need energy to bend space or time. And there's only a couple ways you could get that much energy. Maybe multiply the ley lines of the earth if you had that type of technology, and or if you could capture the energy of a black hole so that it only bends space and time for your personal self, and you would go back in time. I believe in reincarnation. So I feel that we've probably been reincarnated many times over and have been many different animals within our journey of reincarnation. So I think what a vampire does is bend space and time. They go back to when they were a bat, when their soul was in the biological body of a bat. And that's how they instantaneously change from a vampire who looks similar to a human being into a bat. And that is the way I go about it scientifically, explaining how a vampire can shapeshift. So, did you have any questions?
It makes more sense than just saying it's a magical whim, the ability to.
Yes.
And it also eliminates, if you want to get into the forensics, how would one survive that kind of transformation? I've gotten into that with other people on podcasts, as far as you get into obviously depending on the size of a bat, but a 6-foot person shrinking into a bat, all the chaos that would ensue with the human body is kind of eliminated if you take it and you put the soul there and swap the two.
Well, I go into that. I look at how other, like insects, worms can form a cocoon and then come out as a butterfly. But that takes time, and it takes a lot of genetics for that to take place. So even a worm that turns into a butterfly, I think you're talking about a matter of days, if not weeks, for that transformation to take place. So that's the reason why I feel that for the vampire to be able to localize the bending of space and time for just the vampire's personal body and not anyone else in the room. For instance, if I was in the room with a vampire, I would not be going back in space and time. Only the vampire's physical body, bending the space and time would just be localized for his body only. And then he would instantaneously go back to a time when he was in another biological animal's body, and then he would shapeshift into that animal.
Yep, and be able to retain his consciousness to turn back when he pleased.
Yes, it would be the vampire having that ability to turn it on and turn it off. Otherwise, he'd be trapped as a bat forever. So the bat would have to have some ability to transmit back to a vampire.
Now, if we're gonna, what about things like other issues with like the holy symbols being an
What
issue?
was that again?
What about with things like being holy symbols and issues with vampires?
Like a silver cross?
Yeah.
I think the silver cross, what it does, it's more psychological with a vampire because it's got like bright light, and the whole ideal behind sunlight is that it causes the vampire's DNA to denature. So I think it's more a psychological thing when the vampire sees the silver cross, I think it's the bright silver object which can actually reflect light from inside the room or whatever is what catches them off guard. I don't necessarily feel that the silver cross being near a vampire can cause the vampire's DNA to denature. And if you've ever taken genetics, DNA denatures, it comes unraveled, which means you die when it comes unraveled. And my theory is that vampires are extraterrestrial. They may have been, some of them may have been here for thousands of years, and they might be close enough to intermate with humans. So there might be a little bit of vampire in all of us, and we might only have certain abilities that are left within our abilities from an ancestor who may have been a vampire. But this planet that the vampires originally, since I feel they're extraterrestrial, and I also feel that they're cryptid, the planet that they were on had a dwarf star. I think it would be a blue dwarf star. And they were in the Goldilocks zone for life to be created. And I feel that this star, the brightest of their sunlight, would have been no brighter than our moonlight on a full moon night. So that's the reason why they can't tolerate the brightness of our medium-sized star that we call the sun. And I think that some vampires probably have developed like a protection bubble that would actually allow the light to go around their body so that they would not denature. And that might also help as far as any type of silver cross or silver religious items when shined at a vampire's face cause them to get upset and cover up and retreat. I think it has more to do with the psychological fear of them being denatured from the sunlight. But I feel that vampires may have, over the years, evolutionary wise, developed some type of protection bubble which allows the light to go around them so they do not denature if they're caught outside in the sunlight. And that would also help to explain why vampires do not have a mirror image. It's because the light goes around them. And if light goes around something, you're not going to get a reflection in the mirror. And I also have other theories about that. That's the vampires not having a mirror image is, I would say, one chapter within my book. And that chapter, I also look at other reasons why vampires may not have a mirror image. And one reason is they might be from another dimension. So even though they're communicating with you, if they're from another dimension, then they wouldn't have a mirror image within the mirror you're looking at. Also, vampires, they may be able to, how should I say this? Put their image and their audio into your brain. So they might not actually be in the room with you, but they will communicate with you telepathically to put their image, so you think you see them in your room, and you definitely hear them in your room, but then they won't have a mirror image because they may not actually be in your room. They're just sending the information directly to your brain. And all three of those could be happening at different times. They could be actual ways of explaining why a vampire would not have a mirror image. So any one of those could be happening. So I thought that was rather unique, and I was just, I've had my schooling goes up to a 4-year degree in chemistry, um, and I've taken astrophysics type courses, genetics, biology, um, physics. So as time went on, I thought more and more about the vampire and how they do what they do with the new knowledge that I gained. And I didn't get my degree until I was 50 because I worked full time and had a daughter in between and a failed marriage. And all that was expensive and time consuming. And I didn't get my degree until I was 50. So, and I had been thinking about vampires since I saw the afternoon TV show called Dark Shadows. It was a British sitcom, and it was on probably when I was in middle school. So it was probably in the late 60s, early 70s. And I really loved that show. And my favorite character was Barnabas Collins. He was like my favorite superhero. I never really thought of vampires as being evil. I thought of them as being enchanting to the point where I wanted to know more about them. I wanted to learn more about them. And vampires have been on my mind since that young age when I saw Dark Shadows, which was the syndicated British sitcom that came on in the afternoons when I was in middle school. And over the years, I just developed my curiosity would lead me back to different characteristics of a vampire. And as I took more classes, I'd say, okay, that explains how the vampire was able to do what they actually did. And I thought, why hasn't anyone put this into a book? I can write all day about my paranormal experiences. And if you go and do paranormal research, you're probably going to have some of them yourself. And a lot of people don't want to read about other people's paranormal research. They want to go out and do it themselves. And I can understand that. But when it comes to vampires, I thought, this is brand new information. Now, it's the same old historical characteristics of a vampire, but no one has ever attempted to explain how the vampire do what they do with their historical abilities, like shape shifting and not having a mirror image. And I thought, well, why don't I write that down in a book? Now the book isn't very long. It's less than 50 pages, but there's no fluff. I get right down to the point. There's no big build up with the last sentence giving you a bit of new information. All of it is new information. So you think, well, I'm not paying $10 for a 50-page book. I've had people that read the first chapter and said they got so much information, they were blown away. They had to stop and read it again just to remember all the new information that they received. And then it made them want to do internet searches just to see if what I was saying was legit. And then they would say, yeah, everything you were saying was legit. So anyway, I like writing books that make people think for themselves. I like writing books that give people a pattern on how, if they were going to write a book, how they would do it. And I think the book is, for me, a once in a lifetime book. I don't think there's any other subject that I have thought more about and have gained more knowledge about that hasn't already been documented somewhere else. And that was vampires, dead or alive. I had never known anyone to have documented the theories that I had about how vampires are able to do their abilities and have their abilities and do what they do. So it's a once in a lifetime book for me. It's kind of like, I don't know if you remember Chariots of Fire that came out in the late 60s or early 70s. And everyone was just blown away by all the new ways of thinking about stuff. I think it had some Bigfoot information in it too. but they had all type of UFO information. And my book is kind of like Chariots of Fire, but it's not as long, and it's just about vampires. So I think if anyone checks it out, most people will be blown away. If you're not really into science, I wouldn't read it because you're not going to like it. If you're very strict into your religion, you're probably not going to like it because I think it would blow away all of your teachings that you've learned so far, because you have to be unrestrained by, faith, and just go with where the facts can lead you. Look at the logic, look at the science, and then say, that's how a vampire does it. And I really feel that people who like science fiction would love it. And I think it's only going to be science fiction about vampires until we actually have the technology to do it ourselves. So, anyway, if they want to check out my book, it's definitely available on Amazon for $10 plus tax and shipping. And also, ebook is available on Kindle. Ebook's only $2.99. So, did you have any questions?
Yeah. Well, we've got one from chat. It says, what do you get from Deniski? What do you guys think of the idea of CERN as a portal that's letting supernatural entities into our dimension? I'm not sure what CERN is, but
I think he's talking about the it's brown and it speeds up protons, and the protons crash into each other and they break apart. They're at very high speeds, almost the speed of not quite, but close to the speed of light. And when they break down, they measure the energy that's given off. I think it's called CERN. That's the only thing I can think of. It's I'm trying to think of the name of it.
The Hadron Collider?
Yes, that's it.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's like in Switzerland.
Yeah.
Now, what was your question about? Was it about the Hadron Collider?
So they're wondering if that is acting as a portal that's letting in supernatural entities into our dimension.
I don't think so. I don't think the Hadron Collider, if I'm pronouncing it right, is letting in any as a portal at all. I really think that portals are overrated. I think that ghosts and spirits can travel to and from wherever they're at in the afterlife, what do you want to call it, heaven, and that they can do it whenever they want, and they don't need a certain portal, and they don't need our permission to travel to and from. They can just go wherever they want, whenever they want. And most time, ghosts and spirits are so nice and neutral that they don't bother people. This whole thing of everyone being frightened of ghosts and spirits, the only thing to fear is fear itself, because they're really not going to bother you. I'm not saying that evil's not out there. I'm just saying that it's very rare. And a lot of time, if you live the right life and you're a decent person, you don't attract evil. It's almost like if I want to go out, gamble, drink, and run prostitutes, I'm going to attract a certain type of person. If I go out and I'm polite when I go to a graveyard and I do paranormal research and I ask permission to place the ghosts of spirit on video so I can put them on YouTube, I'm going to attract good ghosts of spirits. So that's the way I feel about that. But I don't feel that, if anything, portals might be needed to travel between dimensions. The fact that there's a poly universe, and I think there is a polyuniverse, you might need a portal or some means of technology to travel from the different dimensions in a polyuniverse. And that portal, we don't know the technological name, but I'm sure there is someday there'll be a technological name for you to travel between the different universes within a polyuniverse. And I like to say why I support that there are polyuniverses.
Mm-hmm.
That is because they say after the Big Bang, everything from a 360-degree angle, that's the circle, everything is going out away from the original point of the Big Bang faster than the amount of mass to pull it out. So that means there's dark matter and dark energy that we can't see, that our light cannot detect. And I think what that dark energy and that dark matter is the multiple other universes other than our own that we can perceive. And somehow we just are not able to perceive the other universes. And that's what's causing all matter to travel out away from the Big Bang origins. I hope that answered the person's question.
I think it covered it. There's a conundrum of a question. There's no original point of the Big Bang since time and space did not exist. The Big Bang is getting way out of my wheelhouse. So now you're getting into quantum physics and all that.
Well, I might be able to answer that. What was the question again?
No original point of the Big Bang since time and space did not exist.
No original point of the Big Bang because time and space did not exist. Well, I've heard of that in theoretical physics. But if you do accept the Big Bang theory, which there's a lot of theories out there, at least more than one, then upon the Big Bang, at that point in time and space did exist. Prior to the Big Bang, yes, you can argue that time and space did not exist. But after the Big Bang, yes, time and space began. So I don't know if that was a statement or a question. My eyes aren't that good to read to read what they have written, so I'm just going by what I hear you say. Okay. But hopefully that answered the question.
That was kind of my thought, is even if it didn't exist at some point, if the Big Bang happened, there would be the central point, no matter where the Big Bang happened at.
Right.
Daniski, how about the Sedona portals and vortexes? Do you think they're real?
I've heard some about that. Is that near the that ranch where that millionaire done all the experimenting? Sedona or whatever? Skinwalker Ranch.
Skinwalker.
Is that near that location? Well, anyway, all I have to say is I think that when it comes to portals, it's a term that's way overused, and if there is a portal, it's probably going from different dimensions, and I don't know enough about it to say if I feel it's real or not. It is interesting, and someday I like to learn more about it. Another question?
Another question. That was a statement someone in chat. Now, I have a question, though. How long did it take you to once you decided you started seeing these uh, tangible explanations for vampire, how long did it take you to compile this, and what even struck you with vampire? I mean, Barnabas growing up, but was there something else that said, okay, I'm going to take this and run with it?
Well, I guess it was a work in progress from the time I was in middle school. Every time I read something about physics or learned something in school about genetics or, you know, astro, space, astronomy, I would always apply it to, well, that's how a vampire did what he did. So it was something I'd been thinking about for years. At least, but you're in middle school, you're what, 11, 12, 13 years old.
Yeah.
So from that time until I finished the book in early October of 2018 and got it published shortly thereafter. So uh, it was something I'd thought about for years. And the reason why I wanted to go with my second book being Vampires Dead or Alive, I thought it was a once in a lifetime book. I thought it would be definitely my greatest work because it's original. Of course, the traits, historical traits of vampires is not original, but it's all original as far as how I explain what a vampire can do, what they do, as far as their abilities. That part is original. I don't ever remember anyone to any extent talking about that in any book. So I thought it would be something that would capture uh, the paranormal people, would capture the cryptid people, will capture the UFO people, since I think vampires originally were extraterrestrial. And I thought it would have a broad appeal where if you just write a book about your paranormal research in a certain location, you know, most people just don't want to read about other people's paranormal research. They'd rather go out and do paranormal research themselves. So I thought, well, go for it. And I started writing the book down about 2 years ago. And I was just disappointed with the length of the book. I wanted at least 100 pages. And the book is like, what, 47 pages long? So, and I did as much research in every possible avenue that I thought to make the book longer. And I just saw over a 2 year period that it wasn't going to get any longer. So go ahead and just publish it as it is. And I know some people will say, well, it's 50 pages. I'm not paying $10 for 50 pages. But other people, especially the people who have read it, said, well, you said more in your first chapter than most books say in 200 pages. So if you're really clever, you can put a lot of information into a small space, and people will be going back and reading that first chapter over just to remember what else you had said. And then they can go and do research on their own just to say, well, you know, if I'm talking about genetics, you know, I did several paragraphs on genetic studies that were done by a research company. I don't think they were a university; they were a private company out of New Zealand, and they did research on monkeys from South America. Not monkeys. I'm sorry, bats from South of America that were vampire bats, and they wanted to see what the difference was between your regular uh, vegetable and insect eating bats versus your blood drinking bats. So I found that to just be, you know, right down my alley. And I just thought it was so neat that someone would look into how the genetics had changed between the vampire bat and the bats that did not drink blood. And in most cases, there were amino acid sequences that were missing amino acids. So, for instance, the vampire bat would almost have the same sequence as the fruit eating, bug eating bat, except one amino acid would be missing. So that's how the vampire bat became a vampire bat and drinking blood. It's missing certain amino acids from its DNA sequencing. So I just thought that was so cool. And so that's in there too. And most people say that it's amazing that I put such influential evidence into such a short amount of space, but it covered so much more territory than most books cover in 2 or 3 chapters. So it's a mind-blowing book, and I'm proud that I wrote it. And I think anyone who likes science and they're not overwhelmed by religion to the point where they can think outside the box, they'll love my book. I do.
Yeah. It sounds like you hit right on the question we got is, do you think they drink blood? Is the government feeding them using human trafficking? Can they fly? So that could explain the blood drinking if they're missing amino acids, and that's what they need to continue.
Well, genetically, they're missing amino acids, and that alters them so that they can actually drink blood. Blood has an iron taste, and bats are missing a certain amino acid, at least one, out of their DNA sequence, which allows them not to taste the iron in blood. So it don't taste icky to the bat who drinks it. And could you read that again? Because I was trying
Yeah.
to.
So, do you think they drink blood? Is the government feeding them using human trafficking? And can vampires fly?
I don't think the government is involved in any way concerning human trafficking. Can vampires fly? Well, I take that back. Now the government might be screwing up and not being constitutional. So human trafficking might be taking place now within the last month or two, but it's not allowed within our constitution. So I stand corrected. Can vampires fly? Yes. If they can shapeshift into a bat, they can fly.
Oh, there you go. And Daniski would like to know, what do you think of the Highgate vampire case in London in the 1960s and 70s? Have you read the research of vampire hunter Sean Manchester on that case?
I've read so much. I think I read a little bit about that. I'm just trying to jog my memory. What was their specific question about that? Could you please read that again?
Yeah. What do you think of the Highgate vampire case in London in the 1960s and 70s? Have you read the research of vampire hunter Sean Manchester on that case?
I have briefly in the past, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I all I can remember about it, which is very little, is it took place in a really interesting cemetery. I would love to go to that cemetery. The cemetery had a lot of history. I know that they closed the cemetery off because it brought so much publicity that they were afraid that people coming to the cemetery would attempt to maybe damage it, or they would like get in a fight or get drunk and spend the night there and damage tombstones. But I read it. I don't remember too much about it other than uh, it seemed plausible to me. It wasn't one of those things where you read it and thought, no, that's a bunch of BS. So it sounds plausible, but I just don't have enough in my memory about it. Um, but I do remember that his techniques I thought were pretty good. And I spent a lot of time just dealing with ghosts and spirits, but I thought that he was uh, pretty professional and pretty respectful. And that's with what I can remember from reading it maybe 4 or 5 years ago.
Perfect. Another question from Deniski. Are cattle mutilations an example of government-run vampire experiments?
I don't think so. I think cattle mutilization probably has something to do with extraterrestrials. Extraterrestrials, they may have had a lot to do with us being who we are,
Mm-hmm.
Because there's no other animal like us on Earth. And we may have not even, humans may not be native to Earth. There might have been a tragic problem with Mars, and we probably came from Mars. Some of us did. Probably the rest of them that couldn't get off of Mars in time passed away or went underground. But I don't think that we are originally from the United States. I think we are extraterrestrials ourselves. And so I feel that. What was the question again? I want to try to get the full depth of it.
If you think cattle mutilations are part of a government-run vampire experiment.
No, I don't think it has anything to do with vampires or anything to do with the government. I would say it's extraterrestrial, and I would say it's probably extraterrestrials experimenting with trying to either help their own systems, maybe do like a DNA, RNA manipulation to help their own species, or they might be trying to help us, and they may have in the past already helped us to uh, be what we are today. They may have manipulated our DNA to help us along. So, and they say these cattle manipulations, I've never had a chance to work on any, but I've read a lot of that young lady from out of the Midwest who's probably about my age now. When she started doing uh, investigative news on cattle mutilations back in the 70s and 80s. And a lot of this stuff is done with advanced lasers. There's no bleeding. And you'd have to have some type of hot laser that would cauterize the blood vessel so that no blood leaks out. And they say the cuts are very precise. And if an animal would kill a cattle, any type of animal, whether it be a wolf or a fox, or even a tiger, if we had them here in the United States, you're going to see teeth prints where they chew on the bone or chew the meat off the bone. And they're going to eat the meat. And in this case, the meaty part of the cattle are never eaten. They're left alone. And they really just zero in on the other reproductive and I think maybe even lungs and stuff like that, or eyes. So they're looking at other systems and not interested in eating the meat at all. So I think it would be, definitely extraterrestrial that would be involved with cattle mutilization, and I don't think the government has anything to do with that. Now, does the government know about what the extraterrestrials are doing and turn a blind eye to it? That's possible. Because, I mean, we live in a country where 50% of the people, you know, during the 2020 election couldn't even accept that the person they voted for lost. How are they going to accept it if they find out aliens are real and they're going to be doing cattle mutilization? I mean, people would be flipping out if they found out something. And, you know, especially if they go to church and the pastor says, oh, no, that can't be because it's not said in the Bible. They're going to be flipping out. They're going to be unstable. And if they have a weapon, probably using it, shooting in every direction because every car that went by their house, they think was an alien coming to mutilate a cow's body. So I think the government has every right and responsibility to withhold information from at least 50% of Americans, because 50% of Americans cannot handle the truth about UFOs, extraterrestrials. They just don't have the mindset to understand it, accept it, and move on. It would just disrupt their daily life.
Yeah, I think it was Tommy Lee Jones in Men in Black said something to the effect of, I'm paraphrasing, but Will Smith says, you know, people will figure it out. People are smart. And Tommy Lee Jones answered with, individuals are smart. People as a collective and as a whole are dumb and scared and naive. So
yes,
that's why they withhold information. So the people as a whole don't outnumber the individuals that can handle it.
Right.
I mean, and with the way you wrote your book, to me, and maybe I'm a little odd in this, I would rather have a direct, concise source with not a bunch of fluff in it. I'd always rather have quality over quantity.
Yes, you know, me too.
Like when I play video games, I'd rather have a 10-hour game that's fantastic than these 100-hour games that is just mindless meandering and wandering. And I would gladly pay the same price for that shorter book than I would something that's, you know, you start falling asleep to. I want something that's going to keep me awake. Like, you know, there's a book by F. Paul Wilson, The Keep. I read it in one day every time because I can't put it down. So, but
I think you'll love my book.
I can't wait, because when people can start putting logical explanations to supernatural things, that gets me every time. I'm going to be hooked, because, you know, when you're like, I do, you know, a little bit of the Bigfoot thing, and to be told, you know, it's fake, they can't do this, they can't do that. But then when you see it with your own eyes, is like such a satisfying moment in so many ways. So to have somebody with your education and background and being able to put logical explanations to things that people just write off as, you know, like you said, science fiction and fantasy, is always going to be interesting. So I can't wait to get a hold of that book. Now,
well,
as far as,
as a society, I think we would be better off if we, you know, dropped all the stigma about studying, say, Bigfoot or vampires or UFOs, and got our best and brightest people in there involved. Because there's a lot we still can learn, you know, about everything, especially vampires. There's one chapter in my book about vampires that I hardly ever talk about, but vampires are actually people who are able to self-heal while they are in a coffin under the ground, 6 foot possibly, and up until before the Civil War. After the Civil War, they started using embalming fluid. I don't think anybody could survive that. But before the Civil War, when a grave robber dug up a body to sell it either to a medical school or steal whatever valuables were buried with the body, they were shocked and awed by a person who reanimated. So that is actually a vampire. So not all living beings have the vampire abilities of drinking blood. Some of them might just have the vampire ability to heal once considered dead by medical science under certain conditions, to heal inside of their coffin, almost like they're in a deep coma, to heal without water, without, very little oxygen, whatever's in their coffin, and without food. To me, that's amazing. That's something we should definitely study. Now, today, a lot of times they'll put people into induced comas to help them heal, especially from brain injuries. So, if a vampire can heal like that, dying under certain medical conditions. Now, I'm sure if the vampire was exposed to radioisotopes, they probably would not be able to come back. If the vampire was blown up by a landmine, they probably wouldn't be able to come back. If a vampire was, hit by a car and torn to pieces, they may not be able to come back. If a vampire was burned to a crispy critter, they may not be able to come back. But under certain medical conditions, if the vampire passes away, is buried, might actually be legally dead by the science at the time, was buried, and then was able to come back to life once a grave robber, that is fortunate for them, there were grave robbers back then, accidentally opened up their coffin. Otherwise, they would have just been in suspended animation until they got that breath of fresh air. So I wonder if we went back and looked at all the coffins prior to the Civil War where people were buried without embalming fluid, if we could open them up to see how many reanimate. I imagine there would be all types of legal issues, but wouldn't it be great if one of them do reanimate? And then they would say that Keith Evans's theory was right. But anyway, I'm not saying for anyone to go out and grave rob. I think that's wrong. It's disrespectful. Don't do that. But if you could get permission, especially through a school, to open a grave just to look and see the amount of decay that the body went through. It might take a university that does studies on forensics, so they'll have documentation of a person who passed away prior to 1850, what amount of deterioration their body went through. At the same time, if they do come back to life, then you'll know that my theory about vampires was correct. So that's another thing to think about. Was there any more questions?
I think we got one more. Have you studied the chupacabra? They are blood drinkers that some suspect have an extraterrestrial government hybrid origin.
I've studied very little about the chupacabra. I've talked to different people who live in, I guess it'd be Southwest America, and people that I know of from Mexico, and they more or less say that it's either some type of dog or wolf or some type of combination of both. But I don't think it has anything to do with the government. And it is a cryptid, and it's a neat cryptid. And maybe someday in the future I'll get more time to study up on that. But I'm pretty well limited my knowledge of that cryptid.
Yeah. Well, we've hit that magic hour mark. So as we wrap this up, let's reiterate where we can get your book and your YouTube channel and everything people can do to get in touch with you.
Well, my YouTube channel is called Paranormal Short Sessions by Keith Evans, and I each week I try to put on at least one paranormal short session, which is anywhere from 15 minutes to 30 minutes long. And I also put the promos on. I usually do the promos for Facebook and Instagram, since I have a account on both Facebook and Instagram. But Facebook and Instagram cuts my promos off at 60 seconds. So some of my promos, if I'm getting good data, run a little longer than 60 seconds. So I now publish the promos on the YouTube channel, Paranormal Short Sessions by Keith Evans, also. That way, if you liked it and it got cut off before you were finished, you can go on to my YouTube channel. It's free to subscribe. And you can see all the promos at full length and all the paranormal short sessions from beginning to end with no editing. And most of them are not any longer than 15 to 30 minutes. And my book, Vampires Dead or Alive, is available online only, paperback at Amazon, ebook at Kindle. The Hayes House Ghost or People 2 is only available online at Kindle as an ebook.
Sounds fantastic. So with that, can you hang out backstage for a minute so I can thank you properly? Okay, be right back there. Everybody, thank you so much for the support for Keith. Again, make sure you pick up his book. He gave us the info, and it sounds like a very good read. I already ordered my copy tonight and look extremely forward to getting into it. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Everybody who is going to listen to the replay and from coast to coast and around the world, thank you all again and have a great weekend. Don't forget, question and answer period next week. So on my Facebook page and on the YouTube page, post your questions, hit likes on the ones that you would like answered, and we will go through it all. So have a good night and take care.
listening to a YouTube channel near you.